Hey, Michael J.
So, Mythic Championship 1, Cleveland, in the books.
Definitely. And quite a tournament it was. It's actually the most fun I've had at a playing in a pro tour in a little bit. It was a lot of fun. Like when people are not taking all the turns with Nexus of Fate, the format's pretty good. There's a lot to like about what's going on, you know?
There were a lot of magicians just attacking for 2, and they did so with a 1/1 creature wearing a Curious Obsession most of the time.
That's one of the many strategies, including that which shall be, finished on top. But there was actually, several good strategies. I mean, it's not exactly anything different at all from the previous month. The format definitely is kind of figured out for the most part. But there's a lot of little things and a fair number of good games.
So I actually am going to disagree with you. When you get out of the top 8, but still in the high performing decks, there was some interesting spice. A little Chesapeake Bay, some soy ginger on the format. But I think we can get to that. We should probably talk about the top 8 first, and then before venturing into the non top 8 decks, though. Okay.
Might as well start with the champion, Autumn Burchett.
Wow. Autumn Burchett just backed up they just won English Nationals 15 seconds before this tournament, right?
For the second time.
Oh, but with the same deck. That's the thing, right? I just remember reading this tweet I won English Nationals again. Here's my mono blue tempo deck. Also, I don't have any matching islands. So not having any matching islands, that became a thing. And just run it back. They ran it back and had the exact same result, but with a different tournament.
When we were kids, people used to talk about just getting filthy and about just filthy technology. We never dared dream of showing up with 19 different islands. That's filthy. That's just oh my God, what are you doing? You're just a freak. Wow, you are just crazy. You're just going in there with that's like walking in with 27, I guess 19 different outfits on at the same time and just pulling it off. That's wild. That's how you make an entrance.
In the 90s, I had a set of swamps called the 14 Sacred Swamps, and they were 7 pairs of mismatched foreign swamps that I played in all my decks. But I never ventured into 19 different ones, right?
There weren't even 19 different islands when you were a kid.
I know, probably not. That's actually a good point. But Autumn, just the tilt equity of running 19 separate swamps, and some of them are super premium swamps, and some of them are white bordered, and some of them are just garbage. And you're they all tap for blue, all come into play untapped.
Love it.
All cast a Terramander or a Siren Storm Tamer on that first critical turn.
As for Autumn's actual list, nothing too out of the ordinary. Just a little mix of a little bit of everything. Only one Charter Course, partly because of only one Miss Cloak Herald. The biggest thing here is the combination of 4 Dive Downs and 3 Spell Pierce to go along with the 4 Wizard's Retort, 2 Essence Capture, and a Negate. This is definitely a heavier protection package that makes the absolute most out of anybody of Curious Obsession.
Sure. Yeah, what do we see in most decks? 3 and 3?
Or even sometimes just 5 total, And at the end of the day, though, it's definitely, a relatively stock list. I never totally got why one Charter Course and is right. I get one Entrancing Melody. It's kind of a spicy one to dig to. One Charter Course is kind of I guess you're just rounding it out. I don't know.
But different mages chose different numbers on those. So Julien Berteau played 2 Charter Course and 1 Entrancing Melody, whereas the Duke played 1 Charter Course and 0 Entrancing Melody, but the 20th Island, right? So There is.
I like 19 islands for what it's worth.
So, but to be completely transparent, Autumn did have the 20th island in their sideboard.
Yeah, I mean, when you board into this in 4 Entrancing Melody, 3 Surgemere deck, you want to go a little higher on the curve than just 19.
So this is my question. I assume that the 20th island was yet another mismatched island. I just assume that's the case.
That's true.
But did Autumn always side out the same one when they were like, all right, tear back to starting 60? Or did they?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because for me, like, I would always be taking out the same.
Gonna have to read the article on that one.
But I would have had 20 matching ones. So you know how it goes.
So, yeah, definitely an awesome performance. Autumn just played like an absolute monster all weekend, too. Absolutely just fantastic play. It was definitely a true pleasure watching them play, like both constructed and draft, and it's not surprising at all. In addition to national championships, actually just finished just outside 17th place, coming off that 17th place finish. So Autumn is just like absolutely demolishing right now. I can't even imagine what their ELO would be if we were just looking at recent finishes,
So it just must be one of the hottest players. Actually, must be literally the hottest player on the planet, backing to back a national championship and a Mythic Championship / Pro Tour.
Yeah, and a 17th before, and running the tables here, crushing.
This is like John Finkel in 2000 actual level short-term results.
So definitely got to be one of the favorites going into to London, just given how much of it. Now that it'll be interesting to see if the skills transfer over to Modern, but
Autumn's backyard, right?
Yeah,
wow. Unfair edge.
Totally
unfair.
That's what I said. Just got to be one of the favorites for one of the top picks for fantasy draft for London. That's for sure. Were there? It wasn't really too much to speak to in any of these blue decks. But I did wonder about the exclusion of Exclusion Mage out of Autumn's sideboard. I was curious if where you stand on that.
So, but Autumn, look, Autumn has so many entrancing melodies, right? 4 total, which is on the high end, right? That's
it is on the high end.
You can get.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of folks have got like 2 Exclusion Mage or something, but they're not going maxed out on the entrancing melodies. Autumn also has 2 Deep Freeze, right? So that's an anti-creature card. And I think like specifically against like some super wang bang, super dangerous creatures like Niv Mizzet, Deep Freeze is where you want to be at versus an Exclusion Mage. But at the 3, speaking of mages, Autumn has Jace Cunning Castaway, which is a little bit of an unusual choice, and they had to make room there.
Yeah. I mean, I personally never been the biggest fan of Exclusion Mage, but I do see that most of the blue decks, including both Julian and Reed's, use a couple copies. I don't hate the 4 Entrancing Melody plan. That's commitment, but I'm into it.
Like, it depends. I think like Entrancing Melody is really one of the best cards against Mono Red or Gruul or whatever, because it's so cheap against them. You can really get a meaningful card for not that much mana, and it's so much card advantage, right? Like if you like swing on I guess you're never going to keep a Runaway Steamkin at 4, right? Like they're just going to rip the counters off of it. But like just to get a Viashino or something to
dude, you are so obsessed with red. You realize red is not the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth best deck in this format, right?
It is the best deck against mono blue. It is the best deck against mono blue. Although you would not have known that watching the top 8 match.
I don't know, man.
Of the mono red deck.
So, speaking of Gruul, Alex Magetan, OG, awesome to see, putting up a big, the crossover finish here. Love to see it. And even handicapped themselves with, he even just ran, basically mono red. obviously with the Cindervine's collision splash, but dude, there were people that were talking about this being like, oh, look, this is proof. Like, look, like Gruul did better than Sultai. No. If you look at the people who went 9-1 or better, it was an Esper deck, a Sultai deck, a mono blue, and a Simic Nexus deck. And if you look at the people who went 8-2 or better, it's just like 4 more Sultai decks, some more Esper decks, a bunch more blue decks, more Simic Nexus decks, and then a lot of one-offs, including one Gruul aggro deck and one green splash red bigger mid-rangey deck. But like, I can't get behind this deck. Don't get me wrong, Majitan's a badass, but I can't get behind this deck.
So, I mean, barring the mana base, because when I was playing, I was playing this deck about, I don't know, 3 weeks, month ago. This archetype, not this exact deck. I was playing just mountains, not the Rootbound Crag and the Stomping Ground in the main deck. But I was on spells. I was 1 card off of Alex's main deck. I would never have considered cutting a Goblin Chain Whirler, and I don't know. I'm not saying he's wrong. He might entirely be right. I just never considered it. I cut the Frenzy. But I think that this configuration, whether it's 1 Frenzy down or 1 Chain Whirler down, is where you want to be on the shell if you're playing this archetype, because the interaction between Light Up the Stage and Experimental Frenzy is so strong, right? Like that ability to light up the stage with a Frenzy in play, and then get a look with potential instants with Light Up the Stage on the stack. It's just really enriching for and it's weird to think that because like Frenzy is already so much card advantage, but like it just gives you so much more for so much less mana. It's just nothing. That said, Cindervines is the absolute bomb. I think Mono Red is.
I do love that. I gotta say, I love the Cindervines.
It's this. Just the Mono Red version is already great in my experience against the Nexus decks. I don't know, maybe like straight blue-green Nexus, but I've always liked the Nexus.
Not against Simic Nexus.
Yeah, I can imagine with like their mana base being so much less awkward that that could be a potential issue. But just
the Cindervines is a breaker.
Oh yeah, but just I could kill your Wilderness Reclamation is a powerful piece of functionality that the Mono Red version obviously doesn't have. And then I've heard some arguments that this deck should just mainboard Collision Colossus because it's just always great, right? Like,
well, it's not always great.
I mean, it's great when you're shooting a Tempest Djinn out of the sky, and it's great when you're nugging for 4, right? It gives the trample. You know, it sends your first strike guy right over the top of their giant.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what cards do you want to cut main deck?
No idea.
Exactly. Like it's not that it wouldn't be okay main deck. It's just that your main deck's very robust. It's not until post sideboard that you even know which aspects you want to cut because it's different aspects against different people.
So I'm probably not going to make it to F&M this week, but if I were to, I would be back on the Mono Red plan, inspired by Magiton. I went and looked at my pile of new cards that I just ordered from the internet, and I forgot to buy Collision Colossus, but I own 4 Cindervines. I would be back on Mono Red, and I would be mad when I got paired against Sultai and somebody played a second turn Wild Growth Walker against me. But in other cases, I would be living high. I'd be living life.
So, what do you think of the advantages of a I guess a red deck built like this compared to like the 9th place Mardu Vampires deck by Joe So? This isn't really a red deck so much, but I mean obviously it does have a little bit of red mana, but it's much more like a white deck. But it plays out. It's got the whole Venerated Luxodon with a bunch of cheap white cards, but it's also got Duskborn, Sky Marcher, and Dusk Legion Zealot getting powered up by Legion Lieutenant. And obviously Sky Marcher Aspirant, already a vampire, and then Vicious Conquistador just to be a vampire. And Legion's Landing was already making vampires. And then the crazy, it's not even a vampire, but the crazy, third color splash of Judith the Scourge Diva.
I mean, I don't know these. This is just a completely different style of deck. I don't know about comparing them against each other. This is like a creature aggro deck, and I feel like the red deck is something else, right?
I guess I'm speaking for like somebody who wants to be attacking. Somebody who wants to be attacking.
I mean, if I'm interested in attacking, and I wanted to play an Unbreakable Formation deck, I think I would play one of the white based ones. I think like the more legit white based ones that are similar to maybe like Marcio played.
Marcio's Azorius deck that was, fairly straightforward, but with a couple interesting tuning decisions. Just 2 Adanto Vanguard, 2 Baffling End in the main deck, and then just 1 copy of Vajani, and going with the full Tocatli Honor Guard package in the sideboard. Not too surprising, but 2 more Baffling Ends, kind of interesting, kind of a nice little twist.
Yeah, so that I would use the same word to describe the baffling nature of some of those cards. But if I were on the Judith plan, even though they're both Mardu decks, I think I would lean towards like Ryan Cubitt's deck, which is they're both Mardu colors. Both decks include Judith, but I think like Joso is like way more on the vampires, right? And Ryan Cubitt is way more on like the Mardu and Boros sort of Ravnica. He's got more. So Ryan Cubitt's on way more on like the Ravnica cards, and Joso's way more on like the vampire cards. But I think I would lean towards the
Wait, not just the Ravnica cards, but explicitly the Hero of Precinct 1 enablers.
Yeah. I mean, like, the thing that I love about Cubitt's deck is this seems like an outstanding home for heroic reinforcements. So if you wanted to bring heroic reinforcements back into standard, like, this is a really good spot for it. And I think, like, that is an element of his deck which I prefer to Joso's deck, which the vampire synergies are cool, especially like you're going to do stuff like, all right, Vicious Conquistador, and Dusk Legion Zealot and Maverin Fen. So these guys are all like friends. Sky Marcher Aspirant, which is good in other decks, is friends with Maverin Fen, but he only has 2 Maverin Fen, right? It's like not even like a super heavy Maverin Fen deck. But there's just that aspect to it. But I think I feel like Cubitt's even getting more action out of Judith than Joseph.
Well, Priest of Forgotten Gods is a big game, right? I like that one.
Oh yeah,
that's the one where you tap, 1 in a black, 1/2, tap and sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players, you each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. You add BB and draw a card. I mean, that is a kill on sight creature if ever there was one. Assuming you have creatures, right? But it's that's a big game. I think, dude, when you just go turn 2 Priest of the Forgotten Gods. And then if you all played some kind of a 1-drop on turn 1, then whatever you play on turn 3, you could sack immediately and then just already go straight into a 4 if you wanted. And that's to say nothing of if you played like a Hero Precinct 1, so that you're just generating extra tokens to sacrifice.
What's super odd to me is Cubitt has 4 copies of Adanto Vanguard, which is a vampire soldier, and obviously outstanding against the Esper deck, right? But Joso, who has a vampire-heavy deck, doesn't even play that card in the sideboard. I just found that odd.
Nah, well, why would you play it in the sideboard if you're going to play a main deck?
No, I'm just saying just play it somewhere, right? But it's not even...
No, why? Why? He's got plenty of vampires. What would you cut for it? A different vampire?
I
think he just didn't want to pay for the durability.
Dust
he just wanted speed.
Do you like Dust Legion Zealot?
Yeah, that card's underrated.
All right, I'll agree with you that it's underrated, but I think like Adanto Vanguard is on my short list of where you're like, all right, where are the format pivots? It's on my format pivots list. This card is horrible against Goblin Chain Whirler, but insane against Teferi. It's there, and it's just like I think Adanto Vanguard is underrated.
I don't know. I think it's properly rated.
Properly rated at excellent?
Medium. But actually, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but for what it's worth, You know, I don't know. I'm sure you saw the little controversy with Marcio and Adanto Vanguard this weekend. Or not even Adanto Vanguard. Sorry, it was actually the Dauntless Bodyguard protecting, though.
Yeah.
Like, so that Cry of the Carnarium is a poorly designed Magic the Gathering card, if you ask me.
The word
it's not it's not just that Cry of the Carnarium is so similar to existing cards but not quite actually the same. It's such a weird memory tracking issue. This is that all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Exile all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. If a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. So what may not be obvious is that it looks back in time and just happens to know whatever it is that died this turn. And so, previously there were some -2/-2 effects that you could respond to in order to make your cards not get exiled. You know, like for instance, some of those Bant decks that would just keep, collected company recursion sort of decks could just sack all their creatures in response to the sweeper so that they wouldn't be exiled. Well, Cry of the Carnarium looks backwards. And so anyway, the situation was in a feature match on camera. Marcio was playing against somebody who played Cry of the Carnarium against him, and he sacrificed his Dauntless Bodyguard. Just reflects, of course, why wouldn't you if you are used to playing against any of the other cards? And then both him and his opponent didn't realize, and Dauntless Bodyguard ends up in the graveyard, which then lets Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, bring it back. But there were some people who pounced on him because of obviously past experiences. But I think that they're kind of drawing an unreasonable bar here. It's not just that there were so many people at the Pro Tour who didn't even know what the issue was after hearing the story. It's also that it literally was bugged on Arena. And they were to do exactly this. Like, they had all of the top all the top 32 players or whatever. They're paying them a whole bunch of money to do all their playtesting on Arena. Marcio's no exception. It was bugged on Arena. So anyway, I think people, don't get me wrong, I think it doesn't, I don't want to, can't speak to anything else, but if nothing else, I think it's ridiculous the degree to which people are, they're like, oh, why, of course, he plays all the time. Why wouldn't he know? I don't know, because he plays all the time, and it was literally bugged on the platform that it was being played on. It's not, anyway, I'm sorry to rant. I just think that it's important to, if you're going to call stuff out like this, it's got to pass the smell test. You can't just pounce on somebody because it's somebody who would be an easy target where you could get community support to just rally on somebody just because pariah thing.
He happened to be on camera on this match. I mean, the amount of scrutiny that players are under because they're on camera so often right now. I think lots of players have said this, that you could pick out, a handful of people's camera matches and all of them look bad. Even you just look bad for this guy's supposed to be one of the best players in the world. He played terrible. Yeah, he played terrible for the 30 seconds you were looking at. I don't know. I found it to be super non-intuitive myself. I would have, you can believe the story either way, but I would have done the same thing, I think. Exactly.
If you didn't know the interaction, it doesn't come up. And a bunch of the people I talked to who did know the interaction all only knew the interaction because they found out on MitGo, where they had done it, and they were just surprised. Each one of them was surprised by it the first time. So anyway, I don't know. I just think people are being a little thirsty for drama. So as for the rest of Marcio's deck, nothing too unusual, just classic, very standard archetype, well tuned.
I mean, just Tithe Taker is a new inclusion relative to the last Pro Tour. Just relative. Yeah. But people, at the last Pro Tour, but everybody's
been playing Tithe Taker since Ravnica Allegiance came out, which I think. I mean, you're right. It lines up. It does well what they want. It's just another body, and it's a little bit resilient against removal, and it's the right spot on the curve.
What do you think about Island in the sideboard?
It's fine. I think once you actually board it, like I think that there's spots where you actually want one extra land anyway, and it makes total sense to be an island because like you have 2 disdainful strokes, 2 negates, and a spell pierce all on the sideboard.
Yeah, and the decks that you might bring island against are, at least somewhat likely to have either Field of Ruin or Settle the Wreckage, right? Like it's possible.
Settle the Wreckage much more so. I think Settle the Wreckage is just a much more common component.
Yeah, but I think like if a deck has Field of Ruin, just for sake of argument, you're probably bringing in Negate, right? Like that's I think that's a pretty common pairing.
Well, I also think it's not unreasonable to want it against somebody who might just so happen to have an Assassin's Trophy.
That is a very good point.
You could just disdainful stroke them.
Yeah.
Not on the Assassin's Trophy, obviously, but because of it. So speaking of some control decks, Yoshihiko Ikawa playing Esper. I'm curious your thoughts on this particular build. No Settle the Wreckages here, but 3K is Wraths and 2 Cry of the Carnarium main deck.
Yeah. Again, we see in the sideboard no 4th Chaos Wrath there, right? That's
if you want
puzzling to me.
And if you want to speak about killing your darlings, dude, what do you think of 3 Absorb to go along with this 3 Chaos Wrath and 3 Mortify and 3 Vraska's Contempt and 3 Chemister's Insight and 3 Cast Down?
If you're gonna do it, then I think it's best to do it in a deck that has 4 Thought Erasure and multiple Search for Azcanta in the main deck, as well as like Karn and Teferi for additional card drawing. And I think that's like, I mean, I wouldn't do it, but maybe I'm inflexible. He fits in way more different kinds of functionality. He's got like a negate in the main deck. He has
Moment of Craving.
I can never stand it when I see Esper decks that have the main deck Moment of Craving. I'm just like, really? It doesn't even do that much in the matchup where that's like a breaker. And then the rest of the time, you have this Moment of Craving against Simic or something. I hate it.
Dude,
I hate it.
The thing that gets me is that you go to all the trouble of playing with a Moment of Craving main deck so that you can gain 2 life, but then you don't play the 4th Absorb.
Yeah, but it's just not that good. Like I've played a lot of Red and Standard, and I mean, I'm not saying I've never lost to someone who had Moment of Craving or whatever, but it didn't really bother me that much. Like I don't mind getting Moment of Craving, and then I land an Experiment.
Well, I think you're missing though with what would you play instead of Moment of Craving?
I would easily rather play like a 4th Cast Down. Because
you got to hit Adanto's Vanguard. That's the point.
Oh, man. Dude. Like, you gotta hit Krasis after they just
no, you don't
banged you with it.
Not game 1.
No,
not game 1. No. Esper's already got not game 1.
First of all, they are in a terrible situation some of the time, and this is compounding their terrible situation. And you think there's enough Adanto Vanguard equity in a deck that also has Cry of Carnarium and Kaya's Wrath. To me, that is a pure, I am shooting at your Viashino. That's all that says to me. I'm getting you back for 2.
Maybe. I don't know, man.
And it's just
all that life, it all adds up. 1 Moment of Craving, 3 Absorbs, 3 Vraska's Contempts. It all adds up.
I think that Vraska's Contempt is, I don't know, it's great sometimes. I mean, I guess
I like cutting back on them. I think I like Mortify better anyway. But right now,
here's the thing: Planeswalkers are up, but durable creatures are down. Right, so that's the thing.
Here's the thing: this deck has 10 4s. I don't want to play 10 4s, let alone 11.
Yeah, I don't. It's. But if I had another 4, it would be Kaya's Wrath. That's the thing.
I'm a sucker. I would always play 4 Kaya's Wrath.
I'd so much rather a 4th Kaya's Wrath than a 3rd Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah, I'm a sucker. I like 4 Kaya's Wrath.
Here's the thing. Chemister's Insight is a great 4 in this deck because you could just dump these rando creature removal cards that you don't want, right, in the wrong matchup. But you can never really make this deck good in those matchups. There's just too many cast downs, Vraska's Contempts, Mortifies, Cry of Carnarium. It's like so much creature removal. I mean, can you even get it all out?
Well, you don't looting it away is another thing. You just try to stick it to fairy and not care.
All right, I buy it. Although I have to say, having watched a lot of Esper play this weekend, and I've always been of the camp, like when you're playing against these decks, just like sat out your point removal or whatever, they have so many creatures after sideboarding. Like, I don't know if taking cast downs out is actually good. Like, you just want to, like, bang their Lyra Dawnbringer.
Or whatever. You don't want to do a cast down, though.
All right, sorry. You don't want to cast down. You do want to cast down Thief of Sanity, but you do want to Vraska's Contempt their Lyra Dawnbringer or whatever. But they're just mono creature after sideboarding. This deck has, like, 11 creatures or something, right? Like, 2, 4... there's, like, all right, 7 creatures... and
9, dude, 2 Lyras.
Yeah, like it's a
and that's to say nothing of the 2 Eldest Reborns.
Yeah, those are basically creatures, right? So,
dude, I was playing against the Eldest Reborn out of an Esper deck with Sultai this past weekend, and we got to a spot where I have like 6 cards in my hand, and just let them have the Eldest Reborn. It's like I was just like, I'm just going to power through this. They make me sacrifice a creature. I'm like, I sack the Branchwalker. That's fine. And they're going to make me discard a card. And I'm like, okay, I'll just discard this land. And then I kind of had the read. They go for the 3rd step of the Eldest Reborn, and they take a look at my graveyard, and I can already tell. I'm like, they are definitely wanting that Thief of Sanity of mine instead of the Vivian Reed, despite the fact that I have a Memorial to Folly. And a Memorial to Folly it was indeed.
No.
Yeah, oh yeah, they targeted the Thief of Sanity.
The number of times that I've been like, hey, do you ever think this will come up? And you're like, you're always too worried about the on-table garbage. I knew it. That is just, I ran my Thief of Sanity into your Crawl Harpooner 101. It has reach. Oh, I didn't read it. Yeah. Every time.
So anyway, yeah.
Speaking of Crawl Harpooner, I loved your deck. Oh my gosh. That one game where you just like pulled the Crawl Harp, you had like, he's like Thief of Sanity, and you just like effortlessly pull the Crawl Harpooner and kill it on the spot. That was so hot.
Dude, for what it's worth, though, if I were to do it again, I would first of all, I would take the 2 Harpooners out of the main deck and move 2 of the cast downs from the sideboard into the main deck, and then take those 2 Harpooners. I think I'd only want to play 2 Harpooners in the sideboard, not 3 or 1. But like, I actually like the Thief of Sanity's main deck. I would play another Hostage Taker instead of the 1 Ravenous Chupacabra. And I would not play the 2nd Vraska's Contempt. Vraska's Contempt is very medium. I would instead play the 3rd Find Finality.
I mean, even though you're saying you want to pull the Harpooners, I actually, I watched whatever.
No, I just don't want a main deck. I played against Mono Blue, drew the Harpooner main deck, and they just had a 1/1 unblockable and put Curious Obsession on it.
Well, I'm just saying, I saw you do the thing that you said you were going to do, which was to put control and combo decks on a clock with it, right? When otherwise it would have not been, you just would have had a dead card in your hand. And I was
and against Nexus to Fate and Esper Control, I went 4-0 and I went 4-1. I went 3-0 against Nexus to Fate decks, and I went 1-1 against Esper. It's not a big difference between them. I just think that cast down would have been a little bit better. I don't know. It was very close. Maybe it was even better the way I did, but I definitely think the Hostage Taker would be better than Ravenous Chupacabra.
Yeah, I could buy that. I could buy that.
I like the 1K Orzo of Usurper that Yoshihiko played in the sideboard. Some people were playing a main deck.
Color me impressed with that Planeswalker. I just kind of like looked past it, even though there were applications we talked about before, but it was really good when I saw it in play.
Yeah, I actually like it main deck better than Karn, just because I think you just have too many 4s.
So it's a kind of a passive way to gain life, right? Which I thought was pretty cool. And it's actually, you can actually kill somebody with it, which it never occurred to me that would happen. I was like, really? This is the Orzhov Usurper is going to steal their throne?
Well, you also got to remember that you can't just Teferi lock people, because if your opponent has Nexus of Fate in their deck, they can just discard it over and over again and deck you, or force a draw, really.
Oh, that's nice. So you need a legit way to win.
You must have one legit way to win, and it's better to have two. And in this case, the two is one Karn and one the Eldest Reborn.
Yeah, but the Eldest Reborn might not even work very well against a Nexus of Fate player, right?
No, it does. You just do it on your own Karn.
Oh, got it. Okay.
My point is, if somehow you have to, worst comes to worst, you're desperate, your Karn got countered, or your Karn got, you had to discard it to a Chemister's Ins, I don't know, something, right? You had to discard it to Thought Erasure while you were mana screwed. Sometimes stuff comes up. You don't want it to, but it's nice having a backup victory condition besides just the one,
Yeah, I hear you. I actually also thought that Thought Erasure was such an overperformer every time I saw it being played early. Wow, it just things out.
It's one of the best cards.
Bed sheets.
There's a lot to like about Thought Erasure, but that was figured out a month ago. I think Thought Erasure is just one of the crucial components of Esper control. Simic Nexus. Michael Bondi is playing a Simic Nexus deck with, not really anything too unusual. The weirdest thing here is the use of 3 Sinister Sabotage in the main deck.
So, removed Frilled Mystic, went a little bit down on Hydroid Crisis, played 3 Search for Iskanta, and then like a lot of Blink of an Eye, right? Like those are maybe like kind of the individual tuning things. Like most people play Frilled Mystic. Bondi played Sinister Sabotage, which is obviously faster and actually helps you in a combo deck in a different way.
Yep. What do you think of the sideboard plan involving this mix? 2 Biogenic Ooze, 1 Nezahal Primal Tide, a 3rd Crassus, and the 1 Druid of the Cowl is kind of a...
Yeah, so I don't know. Is this
4 Incubation Druids and 1 Druid of the Cowl?
This sideboard has like 11 creatures, and none of them are... I mean, I think Biogenic Ooze I would want to draw sometimes, but the rest of them are just like... I don't even know why I even want these cards, right?
Well, Atsukan Archer is pretty solid against blue, right?
Yeah, okay. I'll give you that, right? But I mean, I've seen Atsukan Archer in play against Esper. Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, oh, you have a guy.
You gotta want the Thief of Sanity.
All right. Just
hold it off.
As much as you're correct, I just can't imagine wanting to do that. Like, I've decided a 3-mana 1/4 so that I can block.
Block.
This is not efficient. How about I just sided the Crushing Canopy instead? It also costs 3.
Yeah.
I guess he's going to do that anyway, right? But Biogenic Ooze, I'm down for that.
I don't know.
But Druid of the Cowl is kind of cool. You sided it against mono red. It can block or against white, and you could just get your Wilderness Reclamation online a little bit faster, although he's not going to block that turn. That seems cool. I mean, Incubation Druid, is it...
What do you think of the 3-1 split with the Incubation Druid and the 1 Druid of the Cowl?
I think I would always have Druid of the Cowl, right? For the what I'm picturing these cards doing, I think I'd always want Druid of the Cowl. Obviously,
I like Incubation Druid.
It's a much more powerful card. I mean, I guess if you're already going off with Wilderness Reclamation, it gives you a plausible extra way to win. But all you do is get 1 adapt out of it. So they're like, all right, I have a 3-power creature. That's kind of a lot of investment. It's
you just have so much mana.
But I feel like... I guess you're getting the mana ramp aspect of it, which lets you get Wilderness Reclamation out faster, but I almost would rather just have Growth Chamber Guardian. Right? Like, that's just... Like, that guy is just... you just sided it against blue, sided it against white.
I don't really have a good argument for that. I don't have a good argument for that one. What did you think of Luis's... so this is Luis's... it says it's Luis's 19th top 8... in a row.
It's his 10th top 8, right?
Yeah.
But he took a year off at the height of his powers to do coverage, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess He's top 8'd, I guess, like, I don't know, 5 of the last 8 or whatever that he's played in. But Izzet Phoenix deck, I'm not a big fan of this archetype right now in general. Luis's list seems fine. But, it's okay. I guess I don't know enough about why you want to play Izzet Phoenix right now.
That was my question going in. I mean, this is an exciting archetype, but it was previously kind of extincted by Drakes, right? Like, I think the Hive Mind decided that they like Drakes better than Izzet Phoenix. The big trade-offs are obviously this deck gets Arclight Phoenix and Goblin Electromancer, and then trades off, some of the Drakes and potentially Terramander. But I
do like Zero Terramander, by the way.
I mean, this is just. I feel like this is like a Grand Prix New Jersey last year era deck with a Blood Crypt.
Well,
right?
It is, and in fact, Luis mentioned he's playing 0 cards from Ravnica Allegiance besides that Blood Crypt.
No, he's got the Blood Crypt.
I said besides that Blood Crypt.
So, like this deck.
You know what's also sick is that it's not like the Blood Crypt even has a dimension. You could play 1 Watery Grave instead. I
mean, well, no. A Blood Crypt.
Yeah.
Blood Crypt is much better than Watery Grave because
it is. It is better.
Cast Discovery Dispersal.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that it's not like it's some crazy different dimension.
It could have been a Dragon Skull Summit, though. That's the thing. You get like 95% of the Blood Crypt out of a Dragon Skull Summit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like. I'm not sure from a matchups perspective. This deck does not seem better to me against Wilderness Reclamation or Esper, right? Relative to Drakes, although Luis.
Well, dude, I don't like Drakes either, man.
Yeah, but I'm just saying Drakes is like the evolutionary successor of this archetype, right? So, but it seemed like Luis effortlessly defeated the White Weenie deck, though. Like so this deck is a way better racer deck if you get a lot of Phoenixes.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Arclight Phoenix better than Terramander. I think that's a nice improvement. But I guess racing. Yeah, I guess it's just, dude. I don't know. Do you really want to play against like a Sultai deck with this deck? Do you really want to play against like Nexus of Fate with this deck?
No, this deck seems to have no resistance whatsoever to me against Nexus of Fate. Like, there's 3 negates and a Disdainful Stroke in the sideboard. I guess a Spell Pierce. But like, I mean, do you lose game? Like, this deck is so bad against a Fog. Like, they just like, draw their Fogs. I don't even know how you win.
So I think Luis is just a master. One of the boldest who ever did it.
That is not a controversial statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you think that this is going to usher in a return to Arclight Phoenix on an FNM or anything? No.
Nope.
0%.
Well, I mean, some people will play it just because they want to play a different deck, and, it's a deck to copy, but I don't think it's very good. That said, it might be the best deck with Basic Mountain. Basic Mountain sucks.
No way, man. This is the 3rd best deck with Basic Mountain. I told you before, the only decks I have in my bag are Mono Red and Drakes.
So did you see Seth Manfield's deck? This deck, you want to talk about a little bit different. So Seth Manfield finished 34th with a Dimir Disinformation Campaign deck. So his main deck had the good Dimir creatures, 4 Hostage Taker, 4 Thief of Sanity, and then he just had 3 Doom Whisperer.
Doom Whisperer is also a good man.
Yep. Those are the good Dimir creatures. And then 3 Disinformation Campaigns, which he powered with 4 Thought Erasure, 3 Discovery, and 3 Doom Whisperer. Done. His main deck had 3 Duress because he had to go along with the 4 Thought Erasure and 3 Disinformation Campaign.
And the Eldest Reborn.
Because he had no counter magic, because he was just trying to use Duress and Thought Erasure to clear a path for Hostage Taker and Thief of Sanity. And then he actually had 2 Fungal Infections main deck, which I thought was kind of spicy. And the full 4 Cast Down package.
It's weird to not have Sinister Sabotage in a disinformation campaign deck, right?
He's got one in the sideboard.
I think I would want to play more, but I mean, Seth is a known master.
The sheer quantity of 1-for-1 trading, I don't know. I guess I worry that this deck doesn't have enough card advantage without disinformation campaign. I guess you're just trying to ride the hostage taker thief of sanity thing, though, right?
First of all the creatures are enormous sources of advantage, right? Like hostage taker
Enormous.
and thief of sanity. If you don't stop them, they're just engine cards themselves. Doom Whisperer is more or less a card advantage generating card, and all you have to do is draw one disinformation campaign, and you've got plenty of card advantage capability. The thing I worry about here is from the perspective of defending yourself. I don't know. One Cry of the Carnarium in the main deck, and then One Cry of the Carnarium in the sideboard, and then you
have fungal infection.
You're really relying on fungal infection and Vraska's Contempt, and I can live with the one moment of craving here way more than in the Esper deck because there's already 4 cast down. I do worry about that, but this deck can attack into a Wilderness Reclamation deck pretty well. I think it's got it's got like a main deck action there, but there's no good ways to like remove their permanents, right? Like nothing.
Well, it's discard spells from their hand, hostage taker, but not their enchantments or planeswalkers.
I think this is an interesting deck and a nice gamble, but I don't think it's going to become a popular deck in the format.
What about Raph Levy, who went 8-2 with his Simic Merfolk deck?
Well, when I was saying before we had some Soy Ginger or some Chesapeake Bay in this format, that was exactly what I was thinking about.
100 Pro Tours the man has played in. 100 Pro Tours.
The
How crazy
Hall of
is
Famer
that?
himself with Merfolk. This deck it requires a lot of thought and absorption. The one thing that's weird to me, this deck is like basically 30 creatures, 4 Deep-Root Waters, 4 Incubation and Congruity, right? Like that's just a 30 creature deck, but only two copies of the best creature. Like that's so weird.
Merfolk Trickster is not the best creature. You might be thinking of Silvergill Adept.
I mean, Merfolk Trickster is very tricky. Like, here's some things that it does. The opponent attacks with a Healer's Hawk. Merfolk Trickster rips it out of the sky and then takes an eraser to its lifelink line on the way to killing it. Or somebody goes, put Curious Obsession on my Terramander. Merfolk Trickster says, like, cute. Tap him in response. And then the Curious Obsession just jumps into the graveyard. Like, those are the things. I mean, I think that card is real good.
You could always just block.
You can't
What do you think
block.
about this +1/+1 theme here? With Benthic Biomancer. Like, obviously, if you already have a Deep Root Elite, you can kind of go off, right? Because, like, Benthic Biomancer can just, like, adapt itself to begin with. But then every time you play a Merfolk, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Biomancer. And each time you do that, you get an extra free loot.
And what's more... machine.
Yeah, and what's more, if you have Deep-Root Waters, every time you play a Merfolk, you also get a 1/1 blue Merfolk, so you get to loot twice and put 2 counters on the Biomancer, assuming you don't want to just load up counters on your hexproof creatures. And then, obviously, Jade Bearer can give you 1 extra +1/+1 counter to get a free loot. And then the Kumena Tyrant of Oraska, which Levy played 4 copies of. You can actually just tap all your Merfolk, put +1/+1 counters on everything, and whichever ones hit the Biomancer give you free loots.
I hadn't thought about the 1/1 sub theme here, but cynically, I'd say you're looting, not drawing cards, right? So you're basically just either drawing or discarding a Merfolk card, right?
No, land.
So you're turning land into Merfolk.
Yeah, and the big thing is you're looking for the good ones, like Silvergill Adept and mostly Silvergill Adept. But you're looking for the good ones like Deep Root Elite and Silvergill Adept, and then you're also trying to get rid of the extra land. And that's part of the reason why incubation is so good. I mean, the opportunity cost is low. But this merfolk deck has 12 1-drops to begin with, and then 4 incubations, which help you go find your Silvergill Adepts and Kumeno Tyrant of Eraskas.
And then once you've got the Kumena, then you might as well just ditch additional Kumenas that you draw, right? He's legendary.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. You can also have one backup sometimes if it comes to that. But, yeah, this is a pretty spicy little list. I'm a fan of this one.
Yeah, I actually think, of the decks that we hadn't seen a lot of action from prior to Mythic Championship 1 in Cleveland, that this is the one that's most likely to maybe, do a little damage at FNM.
Sure.
Just one thing to note about Raph's deck. He does have an additional 1 Merfolk Trickster in the sideboard, and then also 1 Tempest Caller in the sideboard. Or, I'm sorry, 2 Tempest Callers in the sideboard, which is also a Merfolk. But he breaks off of the Merfolk theme for the full 4-crawl Harpooner out of the sideboard.
Yeah, of course. Definitely.
This is a martial artist who knows where his karate is buttered.
Dude, what the hell are you talking about?
I'm mixing a lot of metaphors. They're applicable to Levy, all of them.
What do you think of 4 copies of Incubation Incongruity?
Like if this deck has like 2 land, then it can cast almost all of its spells. So Incubation can just dig you to quote the good Merfolk, right? I hate the fact it doesn't get you a hinterland harbor or something, but it does that. I don't know that I would want to do the 3/3 green frog thing very often.
Well, you got to do something against like you're playing against Lyra Dawnbringer, right? Or so the theory goes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if given the option, I would turn Lyra Dawnbringer into a frog. Yeah, quickly, and I would be grateful.
Or Tempest Djinn. That's another big one.
Yeah. Speaking of Tempest Djinn, Reed Duke's 20th land, I feel like, served him real well. I feel like every time that guy had a Tempest Djinn in play, he had an open island to protect it with Spell Pierce or Dive Down.
Yeah. But I mean, Reed Duke keeps an extra island open if he's not just playing Golgari.
Yeah, but back to Raph's deck in terms of the different Merfolk Trickster decks. I think this deck is very sweet, and it looks like it's actually probably pretty good as well.
Yeah, I would shuffle this one up. I think this one might be a sneaky metagame call to make for this week.
So even though it's a blue deck, this is like a stompy deck, right? Like this is like,
yeah,
it's like monsters. It's just like they're not very expensive, but they
like a Kithkin deck, man.
Oh, a Kithkin deck.
Yeah.
All right. With Disdainful Stroke.
Yeah.
Just word to the wise, though. This deck is very bad against Niv Mizzet. Just keep in mind. I know you don't like Basic Mountain. I mean, you actually like at Basic Mountain, right? Like he's a good man, but you don't like the card Basic Mountain in.
Yeah, at Basic Mountain is among the best of men. But Basic Mountain, the mana source, not a great time for it, if you ask me. It's not a great time for it.
According to Patrick.
I don't know about all that. I mean, 2 people made top 8 with Basic Mountain in their deck. It's just, I think it's 5th place.
I mean, one of them was Luis Scott Vargas, so that's,
who's not actually, I guess, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. One human who's pretty dope, and then also 1 Greek mythological figure.
Yeah.
Made top 8 with Basic Mountain.
He's sculpted out of what used to be in a Basic Mountain, right? Like
the nectar of the gods,
whatever he's sculpted from. So looking forward, if you're to play this weekend, what are you sleeping?
Sultai, not even close.
Still love it.
Definitely, it was excellent for me. Yeah, I think Sultai is great.
Yeah, it looks really impressive whenever I saw you playing with it. And I got to say that Memorial to Folly versus the Eldest Reborn, like I'm going to write that one down in my dream journal, and hopefully I just, dream of opponents making on-table mistakes, because nothing else makes me happier.
Okay. Awesome, man. Thanks again for the help on the last-minute tuning for the event. Ended up 10-5-1, good for 52nd place, and hope to build on that and do even better in London.
I am rooting for you as always, and thanks for posting one of the best versions of Sultai before the tournament. I really thought your innovations were very innovative, and every time I saw you with like one of your off-center cards, it seemed like it was killing it every time. So
all right, man, I'll talk to you next week.
All right, bye, Patrick.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge, so jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, kept me alive. Visions of better weather.